Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you a fairly quick heat-proof, summer-proof, sweat-proof makeup look. I have got a play I'm going to, so I need to get ready fairly quickly, and I'm going to share with you all my tips and tricks to keeping my makeup lasting through our little humid Canadian heat wave that we are experiencing. Get comfy and let's get right into this makeup look. I've already done my skincare routine and applied sunscreen, a lot of everything, about 20 to 30 minutes to dry down. Now I want to prep my skin for some of these more Longwear sweat resistant products. I'm going to start by adding a shot of moisture to my skin with the Lisa Eldridge Seamless Skin and Makeup Enhancing Mist. This has a really fine mist and it deposits just a light amount of hydration on the skin to where I can add a little extra moisture to my skin without making it feel heavy or weighed down. Today we are experiencing a Canadian heat wave here in Toronto, and it's about 33 degrees Celsius, which I think is like 88 or 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and we have about 59 to 60% humidity. I need my makeup to last, but I want it to be lightweight and more natural looking. So I'm going to multi-prime to give my makeup the best bet for lasting. Start off with my One Size Beauty Secure the Sweat Dry Till Dawn primer. When it is hot and humid, my T-zone, specifically my forehead, is prone to getting a little sweaty and a little shiny. For my hair, where I did my heat styling, I went ahead and prepped with a little bit of dry shampoo to help with a little bit of oil and moisture absorption at the start. If I'm not mistaken, it was my last video where I mentioned this One Size Beauty primer for the first time, and I've used it a few more times since then, and I have to say I really like it. It does a phenomenal job at keeping things dry and a little bit more shine-free throughout the day. I do not like it all over my face. I feel like when I apply it all over my face, it kind of takes away the life that I like to see within my makeup, but applied to the T-zone, it is beautiful. Under my eyes, I am going to use a little bit more powder than normal, so I want to add a little bit of extra hydration, and that will help prevent things from looking dry or textured under the eyes. The Smashbox Photo Finish Primerizer. I always keep the mini size on hand because I don't use this primer a lot. That's just because, in my opinion, it's a really great makeup primer. It doesn't do a lot that I feel like I can't get out of my basic facial moisturizer. So I like to add this as just an extra little bit of moisture and grip and smoothing for under my eyes. And using it for that reason, this small size will last me for about the full shelf life, which is 24 months. If I had more normal skin or that leaned slightly dry, or if I didn't have any distinct concerns like enlarged pores or texture, this would be a great all over primer. But for me, I like it for under my eyes. Final primer I'm using is the Milk Pore Eclipse Mattifying Primer, and this does a decent job at mattifying, but I really like it for smoothing texture, and I also find it does a really nice job at gripping onto makeup. Rub it between my fingers and then press it here into the perimeter of my face and going right over my mouth. Even though I applied the One Size primer around my mouth, right through here is where I can get a little bit of extra texture, and that will just help to smooth it down a bit. And anytime I use a pore filling or smoothing primer, normally it has some type of silicone blend to help fill in texture or irregularities in the skin and make things look a little bit smoother. So to give it the best bet, I always like to press and roll in, and that will just kind of help press and smooth things into the skin. It's almost like spackling a wall. You want to press it and smooth it into place. Now I want to let all of my primers fully absorb into the skin before proceeding with my base makeup. So I'm going to start by doing my eye makeup, and this is also great because it can let me play with some more Longwear products, and then I can clean it up without having to worry about disturbing my underlying base. I'm going to start with my Sephora Collection 12-Hour Colorful Contour Eye Pencil in the shade number 33 Love Affair. This is one of my favorite more burgundy aubergine colors, and the formula from Sephora Collection lasts 4 hours. So I'm going to start by doing one of my favorite smoky eye tricks, and this is where we're going to use some cream bases and layer of powder to create a Longwear Budge Proof Sweat Proof eye makeup. Using this eyeliner, I'm just going to scribble right at my eye eye line. And since I want a little bit more of a smoky base, I'm gonna go about 3/4 of the way across. You don't want this to be perfect because we are gonna break it up a little bit, leave it kind of messy, and then I'm gonna use my cream eyeshadow. This is a Laura Mercier Caviar Stick in the shade Intense Amethyst. Go right on top of the eyeliner, right at the lash line. I'm gonna take it about halfway up my eyelid, staying just below the crease, and I want to use a flat eyeshadow brush. This is the BK Beauty A501. I can either use the side of this brush to manipulate and move my products, or I can use the tip to diffuse. I want to bring this base from the root of the lash just below my socket line, since this does have a little bit of shimmer, and by layering those two, I'm gonna have more depth at the lash line, and where we stopped the cream pencil midway through the lid, as we fade up to the socket line, it's going to be more of a gradient finish. You're going to see that little bit of pigment and pearl further distributed. So you're going to get a nice gradient from dark, mid to light. Same thing on the other side. Now we are ready to move into our powder eyeshadow. Tonight we're going to see Wicked. I don't know if I want to wear this yellow top, or I've got something that's a little bit more raspberry that I might wear. So I want my eyeshadow to go with either look. Powders I'm going to use to go on top of the cream base. It's going to be my Urban Decay Naked 3 eyeshadow palette. And if you are someone who likes this look where it is, you could easily clean up your edges. So I just like to use my finger and just clean up a little bit. Put on mascara, do your base makeup, and you are good to go. I want to build it up and add a little bit more dimension depth, so that's where the eyeshadow comes in. And for summer, I love these muted sunset pink tones. This is one of my all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes. If you want one eyeshadow palette and you like more muted, cool tones, slightly neutral pinks, this Urban Decay Naked 3 palette is a classic. I want to build backwards, so where I started with the lash line and worked up, I'm going to start with my brow highlight and work down. I'm going to use a fluffy eyeshadow brush. This is a BK Beauty A503, and I'm going to start with the matte light pink called Limit. I'm going to start right under my brow, windshield wiper motions, and since this shade is fairly native to my skin tone, it's not going to act like a gleaming highlight. If the brow area gets sweaty later, it's not going to be double gleaming glossy. At least I have a matte shadow down to help counteract any type of unwanted shine that might occur throughout the evening. Next, I'm going to go a little bit deeper, so I'm going to use the matte mauve rose called Limit, and I'm going to use that same BK Beauty brush. This time I'm going to angle straight in the socket line, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. As I have less product on my brush, I'm going to angle it about 45° upwards towards the brow, and this will help me to blend this shade with the previous shade to create more of like a third tone, so that way you have the light, the mid-tone, and then a light medium shade in the middle. Again, angling my brush straight in, back and forth, and then angle upwards and diffuse. And you can do a mixture of these little windshield wiper motions back and forth, or little buffing circular motions. Sometimes I just do a mix of both and just kind of let my wrist lead the way. Now I want to create more of this sunny gradient effect, so I'm going to layer 2 shades together. I'm going to start off with this rose gold copper shade called Trip, and I'm going to go back to that first brush, this time using the side, tap off any excess, tilt my chin up. Right at the lash line, I'm going to start by patting this right over the lid. If you want to, you can add a secondary layer just to build up color intensity, and then as there's less on my brush, I'm going to move my way upwards. I'm not sure what shade I want to use next, so I'm going to mix together Burnout and Buzz, the 2 more shimmery light pinks, and then I'm going to pat right over the eyelid, going right on top of that shade Trick that we just applied. This is going to give it a little bit more of a rosy pink shift. I'm going to go back to my fluffy blending brush. Using the point of the brush, I'm not going to add any additional product. I'm going to go right over top of the seam of the eyeshadow, blend back and forth. Next, I'm going to go to the eyeshadow brush that comes with the palette, and I want to use a slightly deeper shade to add a little bit more intensity right back to the lash line. I'm going to use the shade called Factory, which is a deep lummy brown with a little bit of a shimmer. So I just want to use this to just edge right over the outer half of the lash line, and when there's less product on my brush, I'm just going to angle up upwards slightly to create a little bit of a smoky lift to the outer corner of the eye. Instead of being precise, I'm using the side of the brush to act almost like an eyeliner stamp. And again, you do not need to be overly precise. We're keeping everything really soft so that way none of your shapes have to be exact. Now I'm going to use my finger, and I want to use the lightest shimmer called Dust. And I want to press this just here on the inner corner of my eye to add a little bit of a highlight and create a little bit of visual interest. And I'm going to move on to my base makeup. I'm going to use my Huda Beauty Faux Filter Color Corrector, removing most of the product from my brush. I am going to start by applying a little bit of this just here under my eyes. I really love these deep plummy tones, but sometimes they can pull out the more purpley undertone I have in my under eyes. I like to use a little bit more of a heavy duty color corrector just under my eyes to neutralize any of that unwanted purple tone. When I'm using this Huda Beauty Faux Filter Color Corrector, I always like to wipe off and scrape off most of the product off the tip of the brush and then apply a little bit, just stamping whatever I have left on the applicator. So when you take it out, scrape off most of the product because this is a quite concentrated formula. So a little bit goes a long way. And now I'm just going to color correct around my mouth. And use the larger size of my foundation brush to blend out. And then I always like to go back to the smaller side of my foundation brush and buff the product into any of the small nooks and crannies. This is going to help further thin it out, and the thinner we keep our layers, the more they are going to properly dry down. If you keep your products too thick and unblended, it can be a little bit more tricky for your product to dry down. And when you want your makeup to be as long wearing and as sweat resistant as possible, keep it thin and spread it as far as you can. Something I like to do whenever I apply a layer, I like to add a little bit of a setting spray just to keep things looking and lasting as long as possible. I will use a little bit of setting spray between my steps. I'm using the MAC Fix Plus Stay Over. You could also use the Urban Decay Overnighter. That lasts really well and it does a great job of keeping things on all night long. When it's really hot and humid outside, some of my favorite foundation formulas to wear are the Estee Lauder Double Wear Sheer and the Dior Forever Matte. My issue is both shades I have are a little too light for me, and I recently purchased the Haus Labs Triclone Skin Foundation. I purchased the shade 110 Light Neutral, so this is a bit darker than my skin tone, but mixing with something a little bit lighter will help me to create a shade that's going to better suit my skin. Originally, I was going to purchase a deeper shade of the Dior foundation. As I go deeper, the undertones just aren't right and I didn't really care for it. So I'm going to use about a half a pump of the Dior, and the shade I have in the Dior is shade 0CR, and I'm going to mix it about half and half with the Haus Labs. So I'm going to start with my finger, and I'm just going to start applying on the cheek and blending out as I go. I think the mix of those two foundations are going to create a really nice shade. My face is always darker than the rest of my body just because of the topical redness I have. I've been going slightly deeper to counterbalance it, and then I'll go a little bit lighter with my highlighting under the eyes and in any central points of my face. So far, the mix of these two foundations is going on really well. I really love the Haus Labs foundation, but the shade I have is a great match for my all over body. When I apply it to my face, it just looks a little too light and it really accentuates any texture I have. I think it's 015 Fair Warm, and if you're unfamiliar with the Haus Labs color range, the undertones are like MAC, they're flipped. So the warm undertones are cool and the cool undertones are warm, and then there's neutral, which is supposed to sit right in the middle. But I find the Haus Labs neutral runs slightly warm or golden, so I opt for their cool undertone. This one I did go with a neutral warm or neutral cool, which is really confusing, just because I felt like it's gonna have a touch more yellow in it, which will help to further neutralize some of the redness. And I think this blend of shades created something that's going to help tone down my redness without making me look too ghostly or textured compared to the rest of my body. Those two together will give me something that is a little bit deeper than my skin tone, which it feels like, even though it's slightly darker, it is just helping to neutralize the red to make it look more in harmony with the rest of my body. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of light back to the center portion of my face. So I'm gonna use a mix. I'm gonna take my Huda Beauty Faux Filter Concealer in the shade 1.5 Yogurt Drops, and I'm gonna mix in just a pinch of the color correctors. And next to it, I'm gonna take the tip of the color corrector and just mix it, and that will help to warm up the shade a bit and give me something just a fraction darker, because sometimes this shade can feel a little too bright. So I want to brighten up right here in the center portion of my face, pull it under the eye. And the Huda Beauty concealer, it stays malleable for a little bit, so you don't have to worry about blending. So I'm gonna let it sit for just a moment, and I'm gonna move to my other areas that I wanna highlight. Then I'm gonna go back to the large size of my brush, work in that mix of the concealer with any foundation left on the back of my hand, and I'm gonna start blending, patting, and moving outwards. Instead of swiping or dragging the brush, I want to use my brush like you would a beauty sponge and stipple. Bounce from the center portion, moving out. And then you can move to the other parts of the face. You bounce the brush like this, you're gonna spread it out a little bit further than you initially applied it. So that's gonna help you get a little bit more diffusion of the product and keep things looking softer. Now I've got a large dry beauty sponge. This one is from Sonia Kashuk at Target, and I'm gonna press right over my concealer. And normally we would use our sponges damp, but since I want my makeup to be long wear, I'm gonna use this sponge dry to help absorb any extra moisture from the products. Go back to my Lisa Eldridge Skin Mist, give my face a spray all over. This is going to help to add a touch of moisture to the skin and also help me spread this product just a little bit more and thin it out ever so slightly. And before that dries, I'm going to use my MAC Fix Plus Stay Over. Piggyback off of the moisture the Lisa Eldridge added, but it's gonna also help improve the longevity of this base. And I'm gonna use the bottom set of my sponge that's larger, and I'm gonna pat over my face one more time. Now I'm gonna use the point to get right under my eye. When I get to this outer corner, I like to work up towards the tail of the eyebrow. Once I have that done, go back to your Longwear setting spray, give it another mist. And we're gonna let this dry down and set up while we get our powders ready to apply. I have got a small size of the Laura Mercier translucent powder, and I feel like this powder just lasts forever. I'm gonna use the palm of my hand and my MAC 151 powder brush. This is a brush I use a lot for powder foundation, but I love using this to apply an all over powder. I'm gonna start by pressing on my forehead down the center portion of my face. Pause, we're gonna take a break from the Laura Mercier powder. Now I've got my Huda Beauty Easy Bake powder in the shade Cupcake. A lot of people like this powder to kind of press and bake into the skin. When things get really warm outside, sometimes I feel like that can just make things look a little too heavy. So I'm gonna take my sponge one more time, start just under my left eye, press, make sure I'm smoothing out any creasing, use my BK Beauty 108, and I'm gonna pick up a little bit of that powder, go onto the palm of my hand again, work that little bit of powder into my brush, and then pat from the inner corner or the side of my nose right to the outer corner, swirl in any of that excess powder, and then sweep back and forth. And I always like to do a little bit here just through the temple. This powder has a little bit of a brightening effect, so I almost think about it like a matte highlighting powder. Whenever I'm highlighting this part of my eye and setting it, I always like to add a little bit extra to the temple region, just to add a little bit of highlight to that temple area, because I can get a little bit more hollow as we get older, and it's just like a little anti-aging makeup trick. I'm gonna repeat putting the Laura Mercier powder in my hand. I'm gonna use my MAC 150 brush, work that powder into my brush, stipple over my cheeks, because remember, we only applied this powder to the center portion of my face. Pick up any of that left over and then buff right over. Spray again with your Fix Plus. Blusher can fade fairly quickly, So I'm going to use the tiniest amount of the Rare Beauty Soft Pinch Liquid Blush in the shade Happy, which they call it a cool pink. To me, this feels neutral at most, but I'm just gonna take a tiny bit, work it into my Rare Beauty blush brush, and really work it in and go up high on the cheek. Blend, even though we just applied a powder to the face, if you apply a small amount of liquid or cream blush, work it in, then take your beauty sponge, go right over, it's gonna act almost more of like a stain. Grab to any of your powder products that you apply and just help them last a little bit longer. Now I'm gonna forego any type of powder highlight because I'm gonna get shiny enough as it is, so I don't wanna add any more shine. Gucci Beauty bronzer in the shade 1, and I'm gonna use my IT Cosmetics Heavenly Luxe Wand powder brush. Work that bronzer into the palm of my hand, and then just add a little bit of bronze to the high points and a little extra trick to keep everything feeling cohesive. Whatever you have left, run right through your socket line, nose, and on to the jaw and neck to keep everything feeling cohesive. And then step back, look into your mirror, see what you want to do. I'm going to add one more layer. Give my skin another mist with my setting spray. The amount of setting spray you use is personal preference. Using my sponge just to press everything in, but I find for me, if I take the time to spray, press each of my layers in, it just keeps things a little bit thinner, more diffuse, and it helps things last so much longer. For my cheek color, I'm going to use a powder blush, and I'm using a blush that has a little bit of a light reflect. This is my Hourglass Ambient Lighting Blush in the shade Ethereal Glow. This is a light cool pink with a white iridescent finishing powder blended in. I'm gonna apply this right on top of my cheek, and that's gonna give me a little bit of glow. And this is gonna look a little bit more luminous as the evening progresses and my natural oils come through. That will act as enough highlight, a little bit here, a little bit here. Then I like to use my powder brush again, mist over. And now is when I give my skin my final mist with my setting spray. Now I'm going to layer my lip products. I want to use Longwear lip products that are going to set in place and not move. I'm going to start with my RMS Beauty Go Nude Lip Pencil. I'm using the shade Morning Dew. This is to add a nice rosy brown contour to my lips. Now I'm going to use a lip stain from the brand 3CE. This is in the shade Alive Pink. And I love my K-Beauty lip stains all year long, but in the summer, they're lightweight and they don't move. While I let my lip stain dry down and set up, I'm going to use my Benefit Fluff Up Brow Wax. Just add a little bit of shape to my eyebrows. I'm going to apply a very generous coat of my Maybelline Sky High Mascara. I'm using the shade called Burgundy Haze, which is going to further play into that deep burgundy eyeliner that we applied, creating that kind of gradient sunset effect. I want to add a little bit extra sheen to the lips, so I'm going to use the e.l.f. Jelly Pop Glow Reviver Lip Oil. Not a huge fan of the Jelly Pop scent, but when I saw the shimmer in this lip oil, it was a must. And if you can get past that kind of watermelon Jolly Rancher taste, then I think this is a really lovely lip oil. Hairpin out, a little bit of fluff, and the final thing for my routine is to be a fragrance. It is hot and humid, and I do not want a heavy fragrance. So I'm using my Jo Malone Peony Blush Suede. I find in these warmer weather situations, this is where Jo Malone really shines through. And since this one has that little bit more of that musky base, it's gonna last quite well and do well. As the night goes on, the makeup is going to warm up, further melt into the skin, and I think we are gonna have a winning look to go see Wicked. I am so excited, so excited. I am gonna let you all go here. I hope you have an incredible rest of the day or evening, wherever it is you are in the world. And let me know, what is your thoughts on this makeup look? Do you like a little bit more color? What would you like to see to help keep your makeup summer-proof, sweat-proof, and just lasting all throughout the day? Let me know, and let me know if you've seen Wicked. I am so excited. This is my first time seeing it. Take care. I will talk to you later. Bye, y'all.